Hi, welcome to Craft It Sweetly. I'm Diana. Thanks so much for being here. In this video, I'd like to show you how to create this design on Marzipan with a very simple tool. For this project, you will need Marzipan, which is an almond paste. It's almost like Play-Doh, and you can purchase it. You can also make it yourself. I have it in a roll right here. Open this so I can take it out. Now I do have some cornstarch if needed. I'm using a Silpat, so if I find that it's sticking, then I'm going to add a little bit of cornstarch. And I will add some cornstarch to my hand just so that it doesn't stick to it. And what you want to do is you want to roll this out. I'm using a rolling pin. Now if you're doing this for something that would be edible, obviously use gloves. This would be just a centerpiece, a showpiece, not really intended for eating. So I'm not using any gloves for this. But if you're putting it on somebody's cupcake, if you're making smaller pieces, this would be great to use to make logos, for example. Not so much logos, I guess you can write names, not intricate logos, because that would be too tiny. But anytime you're gonna do this for edible purposes, then make sure you're wearing gloves. I have a rolling pin, and I'm just gonna roll this out. The image that I'm using is a little smaller than 8.5 by 11. And you can see that it's not sticking to it. You don't wanna add too much cornstarch, because then it's going to dry out and crack on you. And as I'm rolling it out, I do have the image here so that I can test it and make sure that this is the right size. If that helps, you can also just trim it a little bit so that it's easier to see if I have the right size. And this particular image I got off Creative Fabrica, which is an amazing website for a lot of different images if you're looking for one. I have a link below for this particular one in the description box below, so you can use the image if you're interested in making the same design. But they have lots of other designs. So I'm just gonna roll this out. Depending on the size of your image, you may need a couple of these rolls. I should be okay with one. And because this would be a centerpiece, obviously it wouldn't stand on its own. What I would do is apply this to a piece of chocolate. That way it has additional support in the back. Let's see, kind of shaped it around here. And that looks about the right size. And I will keep the marzipan on here. Now, if you're not working with it, cover it so that it doesn't dry out as you're working. And for anything that I'm cutting, I like to use this kind of spatula. It's a super thin spatula. The blade is incredibly thin. But I like it because it's just really easy to hold and works well for thin cuts. It doesn't leave a big dent in it. So I'll trim off the excess because you can reuse this for other projects. So I don't want it to dry out. So I have kind of the idea here. Now I can trim it to make it a little more . Let's see where this was. The other option is once you're done with it, then you can add some kind of border to the marzipan. That way it looks nice and tidy versus sort of just raggedy. Okay, so that's about the shape I want this. And again, you can trim a little more off of it later, or you can just add a border, either piped chocolate or something like that to finish it off. You can also color this if you'd like. The one thing you don't want to do is overwork the marzipan. What happens when you do that, the oils separate and then it just breaks down on you and you can't roll it out nice and smooth. Once you have this while it's still soft, what I want to do is trace this. Now, I am not great at freehand drawing, so that's why I'm tracing this. I'm going to hold it in one place and then just trace the main areas. The rest I will just use as reference. For this, I'm using a stylus kind of embossing tool. I have a link below for all these supplies that I'm using, so just check out the description box. I want just the main outline since I can't draw freehand very well. You don't want to press too hard. I just did right there, so I'll have to smooth that out because you're going to poke through the paper and then put a hole in the marzipan. So just trace the main outlines for this. And as you do this, you're going to see an indentation, so you can go back and see if you've missed any. Just lift the paper and you can kind of see the marking on the marzipan. Might be a little hard to see on camera. Trying to remember what areas I covered here so I don't go back on it. If you can do this freehand, that's perfect. You don't have to, you can skip this step. I unfortunately can't draw things like this. Go back and make sure I see. Sometimes you have to look at it at different angles to be able to see exactly where you drew the lines. This would be a point where you could stop, just make sure you cover it if you haven't, if you're not able to continue on with the next step. So if I pick this up, let's see, you can kind of see the indentation right there. Okay, so I had this covered because I had to, there was something I needed to do, so you can certainly do that, roll it out, and then have it covered before you can proceed on to the next step. But before doing that, what I want to do is, so I'm going to use a wood burning tool. And for this particular design, I will use this tip. I already have it plugged in, so it's getting hot. I'm not going to touch it. But the tip that I have is almost like a paddle. And the reason I want to do that is because in these areas here, I want to do shading. And I don't want to have to switch the tip out once I draw the line and then switch it to this one. So I'm just going to use this one right off the bat, and I'll use the tip to create the outline and then the flat part to shade it. But before doing that, I want to test this to make sure that it's hot enough. So I just took a little extra piece of marzipan and I'm going to touch it on here. So as you can see, it's already kind of smoking right there. And the longer you hold it on, the darker it gets. And the smoke just smells so wonderful. It's just caramelized sugar. So if I hold the tip this way, it's going to create a line, and then with this I will shade. So I'll get this off over to the edge and take this off. Now you may not be able to see it as well on camera here. Right there, you can kind of see the outline as I marked it on the marzipan. And I'm just gonna do the outline as much as possible and then go back and actually shade the area. And if you need to rotate this, certainly do that so that it's easier to work. So let me start here in the back, and I'm gonna hold it upside down so that I can create the line. And I'm using the edge of it too. And what's nice with this is that it can be almost like fur, so it doesn't have to be completely smooth. And as you do this, this may cool off a little bit, so you can wait a minute for it to warm up again or get hot enough. It should be fine. I don't think anybody would be drawing that fast that it's cooling off. And you can use this as a reference to see sort of what you need to do to draw. On his little tail area here. And you can use a piece of paper just to get some of this off if you find that some of the marzipan sort of stuck to the tip. So as you can see now, I'm doing the eye and I'm holding it on here a little longer just because I want that darker, but I still want a little bit of the white. And when I'm doing this, I'm slowly dragging it on it, but giving it time, giving the iron itself time to caramelize the sugar a little bit. And whatever you add the caramelized sugar, you do want to kind of go back and blend it in so that it's not, you know, a thick outline. As you work with this, if it looks like a lot of the sugar has caramelized onto the tip, you can take a wet paper towel and just wipe it off. You may need to use the little scraper to get, if it's like super thick on there. See, you can see that some of it is coming off when you scrape it. You could always go back and add some additional line, you know, if you're losing any of the definition, you could go back and add the darker line with the edge of the iron. And then once you have everything caramelized exactly as you like it or shaded, then you can take it and apply it to a piece of chocolate, white or dark. And then I would pipe some kind of border around it so that it finishes it off. I hope you enjoyed this video in how to take a piece of marzipan and add a beautiful design to it using a wood burning tool. And traced image if you can't draw freehand. If you have any questions, please comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next project.